Top 20 interview questions and answered in ASP.NET Core MVC.
1. What is ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC is a web development framework that follows the Model View Controller architectural pattern. It allows developers to build scalable, modular, and high-performance web applications. 2. What are the main advantages of using ASP.NET Core MVC? Some advantages of using ASP.NET Core MVC include cross-platform compatibility, high performance and scalability, built-in dependency injection, support for modern web development practices, integration with popular front-end frameworks. 3. Explain the MVC pattern in ASP.NET Core MVC. The MVC pattern separates an application into three main components: model, represents the application's data and business logic; view, renders the user interface and displays data to users; controller, handles user input, interacts with the model, and determines the appropriate view to render. 4. How does routing work in ASP.NET Core MVC? Routing maps incoming URLs to specific controller actions. It determines which controller and action should handle a request based on the URL patterns defined in the root configuration. Routing is usually configured in the startup class using the useEndpoints method. 5. What is the role of a controller in ASP.NET Core MVC? Controllers handle user requests, process input, interact with models, and determine the appropriate view to render. They contain actions that are invoked based on the user's interactions with the application. 6. How can you pass data from a controller to a view in ASP.NET Core MVC? Data can be passed to views in several ways: using strongly typed models, define a model class and pass an instance of that model to the view, using viewBag or viewData. These dynamic objects allow the passing of data between the controller and the view, using tempData. TempData stores data for a subsequent request and is useful for scenarios like redirects. 7. How can you implement authentication and authorization in ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC provides built-in support for authentication and authorization through various authentication middleware, such as cookies, JWT, and external providers, OAuth, OpenID Connect. You can configure authentication options in the startup class and use attributes like authorize on controllers or actions to restrict access.
8. What is the purpose of model binding in ASP.NET Core MVC? Model binding maps incoming request data to action method parameters or model properties. It simplifies the process of extracting values from HTTP requests and automatically populating the relevant objects in the controller action. 9. How can you handle errors and exceptions in ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC provides a middleware called useExceptionHandler to handle exceptions globally. Additionally, you can handle errors within specific actions using try-catch blocks or by using the handleError attribute on controllers or actions. 10. Explain the concept of dependency injection in ASP.NET Core MVC. Dependency injection is a design pattern that allows classes to depend on abstractions rather than concrete implementations. ASP.NET Core MVC has built-in support for dependency injection, which simplifies the management of dependencies and promotes testability and loose coupling between components. 11. How can you implement validation in ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC provides both server-side and client-side validation. Server-side validation can be implemented using attributes such as required and regular expression on model properties. Client-side validation can be enabled by including the necessary JavaScript libraries and enabling client-side validation in the view. 12. What is the purpose of middleware in ASP.NET Core? Middleware in ASP.NET Core is a component that sits between the server and the application and processes requests and responses. It allows you to add various functionalities, such as authentication, logging, caching, and routing, to the request pipeline. 13. How can you handle AJAX requests in ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC supports handling AJAX requests by returning JSON or partial views from controller actions. You can use the JSON result class to return JSON data, or the partial view result class to return partial views, which can be inserted into the DOM using JavaScript. 14. What is the difference between ASP.NET Core MVC and ASP.NET MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC is a new framework designed for cross-platform development, performance, and modularity. It is a complete rewrite of ASP.NET MVC and is not backward compatible. ASP.NET Core MVC is built on top of the ASP.NET Core framework, which provides more flexibility and better performance. 15. How can you implement caching in ASP.NET Core MVC? Caching can be implemented in ASP.NET Core MVC using various caching mechanisms like in-memory caching, distributed caching, or response caching. You can configure caching options in the startup class and use attributes like response cache on controllers or actions to control caching behavior. 16. What is Razor Pages in ASP.NET Core MVC? Razor Pages is a lightweight alternative to the MVC pattern in ASP.NET Core. It allows developers to build web applications with a simpler programming model, focusing on page-centric development. Razor Pages combine the model, view, and controller into a single page. 17. How can you deploy an ASP.NET Core MVC application? ASP.NET Core MVC applications can be deployed in various ways: self-contained deployment, bundle the application with the runtime and deploy it as a standalone package, framework-dependent deployment, deploy only the application code and rely on the presence of the runtime on the target machine, containerization. Package the application as a Docker container and deploy it to a container orchestrator like Kubernetes. 18. What is the role of the startup class in ASP.NET Core MVC? The startup class is responsible for configuring the application services, request pipeline, and other application settings. It contains methods like configure services to configure dependency injection and configure to define the middleware pipeline. 19. How can you unit test ASP.NET Core MVC applications? ASP.NET Core MVC applications can be unit tested using various testing frameworks like MSTest, XUnit, or NUnit. You can write unit tests for controllers, actions, models, and other components using mock objects and assertions to verify the expected behavior. 20. What is the future of ASP.NET Core MVC? ASP.NET Core MVC is continuously evolving and is expected to remain a popular framework for web development. Microsoft regularly releases updates, improvements, and new features for ASP.NET Core, ensuring its relevance and support in the future. Like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the notification icon for being updated.